Yeah, it's this call it bias, but I personally really enjoyed this episode. In some ways, it's like a better version of Kirby's dual role. Yes, the only things resembling it is the copy ability and the fact we learn more about Nightmare Enterprises, but I still view it in that regard. Plus, it has the benefit of not changing the initial plot. By that, I mean that Krakow is the conflict of the episode at the start, and stays the only conflict of the episode until the end. It doesn't change midway into Kirby fighting another monster or doing something else. Yes, we get a long scene that's just about explaining the main villain's motivations, the Galaxy Soldier Army, and a bit of MK's past, Kirby's origins, partially, and how the Warp Star affects him. But I don't think it takes away from what the episode sets out to do. Quite the contrary. It certainly adds more than whatever Bugsy was trying to expand upon in Kirby's dual role. And I adore the background used during Krakow's fight. It's literally just random colors, but they're gorgeous random colors. Also, this is the only episode where I laughed at one of Togori's words, so good job, Birdie. Since we were already here, I'd like to give a shout out to this episode's soundtrack, especially the original Japanese version. It's always great, but this episode in particular introduces us to many bangers, such as Strong Star Warrior, DDD Puzzle, and the beautiful Higher Star, one of the most underrated tracks from the anime. The only complaints I have with the episode are more so nitpicks, like who took the photos during Kirby's fight against Octaron, or why does Kirby get the sword ability from Krakow's laser beams? Stuff did appear much later in the show, so why not here? But those don't take away much of my enjoyment of this episode. So apparently this episode was banned in America for a long time. Why is that? Because it painted doctors in a negative light. Really, for kids? You didn't censor kind simping for Thief, you didn't censor the ending of Tuned Out, you had shell-shocked ones, despite being pretty infamous in the Kirby community, but this is not okay? I mean, boo-hoo. Anyway, this episode is pretty good. After not brushing their teeth probably, if at all, Kindy Didi and Taff get carries, so they have to go to the worst person the whole time. The dentist. Kindy Didi and Taff are understandably scared, maybe, and desperately seek an alternative to cure their pain. Using a medicine, getting hit on another part of their body so they will forget about it, and ordering a monster rather than a professional dentist. This episode was pretty hard to watch, not because it was annoying or bad per se, but because of how real it felt. It perfectly represents the dangers of caries and how bad not brushing your teeth, or even avoiding the dentist, can be. Kindy was pretty fun in this episode. It was quotable, made meme-worthy faces, heck, he even mocked teeth once, and Kirby having not it was pretty amusing, if a bit nonsensical, given how he brushed them earlier. This is a pretty solid episode. I don't see why it was banned or why some people don't enjoy it. You may say that brushing your teeth is such a childish or, God forbid, cringy moral, but I don't get why that's a bad thing. This is a kids show, of course it's going to have an episode about how important brushing your teeth and going to the doctor is. It's a basic moral, but an important one. Yes, it's creepy, but I think that was the intention. The episode wanted to tell a real message, so it had to treat cavities as severely as they are in real life. There are some jokes in the episode, but they're not done at the expense of the subject, of somebody having it. And when they are, the character gets probably mocked for it. Kindy Didi taunts escargoon's caries, so when he gets them and constantly avoids doctors, he gets mocked back. A Dental Dilemma is far from being the best episode of the show, but it never has a dull or boring moment, and we should stop pretending that it sucks.
他人の不幸こそ最高の娯楽ぞーって
Mailman gives Escargoon a love letter. Yes, it's that kind of story. Okay, no, it's a letter from his mom. He wished her that once he left home, find a nice job. Unfortunately, life wasn't kind on him, so he was left with being the king's servant. However, to make her proud, he lied and told her he became king. So now that she's coming to Cape Town, everyone has to treat him like he's royalty for one day. It's sweet, that's all. I forgot how mean Tiff and Taff were to Escargoon at the beginning though. They're reluctant to help him even after he begged multiple times. But that only happens for like a quarter of the episode, so that doesn't bother me too much. Escargoon's mother is a very nice and gentle character, and when you pair her with Kirby, they become downright adorable, picking a flower to replace her umbrella, using it as a fan, and being sad that she has to leave so soon. They also have some pretty funny moments with Didi, now being treated like the castle's jester, while also not going as far as to making a complete idiot. Of course, Escargoon's mother finds out he isn't the real king and all, whilst Didi sabotages the snail with the umbrella monsters, but I don't mind it since she didn't see more or less in him before and after it all there. And the drifter fight was pretty cool, so there's that. You may think that putting this episode this high up is preposterous, but screw that, this is my list and I get to choose whatever episodes are my favorites. Next!
いつからわしの母親になったぞい。
あんたの母親？でや、私はそんなに太ってないよ。
空飛ぶエスカルゴーンなんちでこあれ
A new craze spreads in Cape Town. Kirby finds a ninja scroll, and more people want to live the ninja freestyle. And more people want to live the ninja lifestyle. Soon, everyone starts playing and acting like a ninja. Besides Steve, of course. However, we later find out that was no scroll, but a report card that proudly shows how bad Benny Kage's ninja skills truly are. Look at those red triangles. I love how he's shown to be a threat, not unlike any of the monsters Didi orders, but once he uses his shurikens, he found out he's worse at throwing them than Kirby, a literal baby. I can relate to that. Oh no, I never tried being a ninja, but I think we all have or used to have that one subject in school we never or barely managed to get a passing grade on. So this episode means quite a lot to me. That and ninja episodes are always cool, so there's that. And hey, to Benny Kage's credit, after the fight against Yami Kage, his ninja skills do get a bit better. Maybe.
メタナイトに星のカービィ。相手にとって不足はないわ。借りを返す時が楽しみだ。
He was never seen again. Also, Green Eye Steve. King Didi has the idea of opening up a new restaurant after coming to the conclusion that Kawasaki's food is terrible for the 36th time with a little help from a monster named Monsieur Gone, leading Kawasaki to lose all of his customers. Fortunately, things turn upside down when Chief Bokem comes to Kawasaki's for some spicy ramen, because of how packed the other restaurant is, and Kirby is the cook's little helper. Look at him cook. Unfortunately, or fortunately, he puts in too many peppers by accident, and this ramen is the cause of the new spicy grades. Until it isn't. This episode is a lot of fun. Like Hail to the Chief, this premise is a no-brainer for the show. I love how the two cooks constantly want to up each other and then the latter decides to self-call sherbet. And the fight against Monsieur Gone was also pretty unique. We get to see Kirby losing one of his abilities, not Kirby's adventure onward style, and using Kawasaki's special Kirby that literally burns you alive to his advantage. But although speaking French was also pretty cute. My only real gripe with this episode is that Kirby almost gets eaten because the cook made the sherbet look too close to him. We already had that in the big taste test. Do we really need that again? Besides that, It's one of the most entertaining episodes. That was the most amazing thing in the world. Dear Nova, what a wonderful finale. Like, it's not like the season 4 episodes before it weren't good or great, and it's not like I didn't expect it to be good, but this good? This is the less special / arc, the ending of Kirby, and it highly exceeded my expectations. The first 2 parts are about Kindly and Escargoon finally realizing that it's the warp stab that keeps Kirby going, and upon realizing that only Tiff can summon it, as she is arguably Kirby's best friend, they hold their hostage until she summons it or tells them where it is. Unfortunately, while trying to rescue her, Taff accidentally reveals that it's inside of Kaboo, and an alien / UFO called Destroyer, very fittingly something that destroys stuff, goes after Kirby, and especially his most precious item, and when that fails, it summons 4 air ride machine riders, who also go after the 2 of them. It's neat seeing the vehicles from Kirby Air Ride be referenced, and the new abilities have a pretty cool origin. You see, a contest was held during the making of those 2 parts for Kirby fans to create new abilities that would be used, and there were many scrapped ones. Only 4 of them made the cut: Iron, Beton, Top, and Water. Water even got the chance to make it into the trial of Kirby GCN, and multiple games that thankfully weren't cancelled, although it's not like the developers had much of a choice. Iron functions like stone, although it does have a pretty neat design. Beton would inspire stuff of TAKirbyStar allies, and Top is just yo-yo but not as cool. But the fact a fan-made ability even made it into a game, let alone multiple of them, is oddly wholesome. Takahiro Tonoe, wherever he is, must feel really happy that his own ability has gone such a long way. I don't like how the fights with the Air Riders were just part of a dream sequence, but besides that, there isn't much wrong with those 2 parts. At the beginning of the 3rd part, we realized that, oh my gosh, not only is Nightmare Enterprises trying to destroy Kirby, but the entirety of Capitown, including his #1 customer. They really mean business this time. You know, except for the other time they tried to do that, but that's besides the point. Meta Knight finally does the most helpful thing he's ever done in the show, and shows us his own battleship, the Halberd. With that, they pretty much destroy this weapon, but the victory is short-lived, as not only will they encounter other ones like it, but with that, Nightmare Enterprises isn't defeated. It may never will if all they do is have Kirby defeat its monsters. So they finally decide to let Nightmare Fortress know its place. It's mostly just all setup for what's to come, but it does have some pretty cool tracks, and Kid Cosmos appears up for the first time since his debut in Season 1, to encourage the Cappies to fight with Kirby, showing that the reason he's acting his debut was mostly due to the bad plot / execution, not because he's a bad character. The 4th part is also mostly set up, even more than the last one, but to its credit there are some funny moments, like Kawasaki not understanding that the heavy lobster is a mechanical lobster, not a sentient one. Also, Kindly gets arrested for trying to eat Kawasaki's spicy oyster stew. Also, the way Kirby defeats Heavy Lobster was pretty creative. Kirby can't use a frying pan against it, so he'd have to find a different way to cook it. Lobsters usually are cooked with fire, but can be cooled down with some ice. And since Heavy Lobster is, well, a lobster, it works swimmingly. No, Kawasaki is not a sentient lobster, you can't cook it like out, you know what, it doesn't matter. Oh, and Knuckle Joe Civical Sea Arthur and his comrades make the biggest comeback of all time by destroying the evil destroyers with their good counterparts. I think. That was pretty cool. Last part is pretty much about everyone who worked on defeating Nightmare, destroying Nightmare HQ, and everyone who worked for it, especially Nightmare. Kirby defeating him in his dreams was pretty unique, even though the dream itself stereotypes Kirby in just being this guy who cares only about food. and Tiff being kidnapped was pretty much shoehorned in. In the first parts, at least DDD kidnapped her so she could tell him where the rope star is. This is just whatever. On the other hand, Nightmare's last line was actually pretty chilling. The fact that he'll never be truly dead as long as you have fear in your heart is a pretty scary thought. It's emblematic of what he stands for, and a perfect way to show that just because his fortress may be down, Kirby's adventures are far from over. We're also treated with perhaps the funniest moment between King DDD, Escargoon and the customer service. They force him to eat Kawasaki's liver and chives, and they're so bad he literally has to brush his teeth to go get the horrible taste out of his mouth. Maybe my standards have dropped to the point where I think something like this is big fiction, at least by these show standards. But yeah, I really love this finale. There's never a dull moment, none of the characters are unlikable. Meta Knight gets a lot of screen time, Kirby abilities that appeared in the movie are fantastic. It's amazing, no matter how you slice it. A perfect finale to this perfectly average anime. A frog from some reason possesses Kirby and he starts causing mischief in Cappy Town. Well, mischief is quite an understatement. He goes bonkers, haha.
なんだ。お、やあカービィ、いらっしゃい。今日は何？
It's a pretty chaotic experience, what with him making a mess out of many iconic places of Cappy Town. His bad deeds range from breaking people's stuff, to committing Grand Theft Auto twice, and burning places alive 3 times. Accurate Kirby fans and content creators, this is how you do a Kirby's evil media correctly. Not because Kirby isn't doing this by choice, but because the things he does aren't as overblown or serious. Kirby doesn't need to eat or destroy planets to be a good villain/antagonist. That's played out, and let's be real for a second, even more silly than him just breaking something just because. As someone who's ranted about it for a hot minute, it's freaking refreshing to see a piece of Kirby media that can make Kirby evil and not be childish and lame. I actually laughed multiple times when Kirby did those unhinged things. I dare to dock it a few points for doing an idea the show's done so many times early in the show's run. A reality TV, Kirby's Excellent Adventure, The Pillowcase, Watermelon Felon, and Cartoon Buffoon already explored the idea of Kirby doing bad things, of just being portrayed as the evil one, but it doesn't take away much from this amazing episode. And hey, this is the origin of the Demon Kirby and Buff DDD designs Star Allies will use later on. There's also this hilarious back and forth conversation between the customer service and King DDD.
カスタマー出るぞい。
これは心愛なる陛下ご機嫌うる
わしくない。わしは悔しいぞい。
悔しいぞい
悪魔はわしぞい。
わしぞい
カービィに負けたくないぞい。
負けたくないぞい
どうしてくれるぞい。
どうしてくれるぞい
いい加減にオウム返しはやめるでゲス。
It's telling when the preview of this episode jokes about how ridiculously overblown the trope of flanderizing a character, or making them outright unlikable to keep a show fresh, and it's usually done when it lost its way. I wonder if that was an intern of Warp Starring telling us, man, this show went for longer than we wanted it to. It's not like it's made super obvious to us, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, given how quite a lot of my least favorite episodes come from this season specifically. Although, Tiff claims that it's about a doppelganger taking over and making the original counterpart look bad, a la Sonic Adventure 2. No. Unless it's talking about another trope which wasn't in this episode. The last Knuckle Jaw-centered episode. Did he go out with a bang? Yes. I mean, you probably already knew it, but still. Nightmare Enterprise's strongest monster, Masher, is back, and Knucklejaw tries to fight them off. Unfortunately, Masher's power is more than he can handle, so he takes shelter in Castle DDD, but is so injured that he needs to rest in Tiff's bed. But he can't stay put, because he lost his father's precious medallion, which is now stolen by King Dedede and Escargoon. So he's after two different enemies, Masher for causing havoc in general, and Dedede for stealing his medallion and using it to taste some of their inventions. Maybe I'm putting it too high, but I really love this episode. It uses all the characters well, yes, even Lolo and Lalala. It's the most unique plotline for a Knucklejaw episode. Knucklejaw in general is such a cool and unique character. What more could you ask? Creepy. One night, the enemy monster teleporter starts working on its own, and the monster runs away. The enemy salesman reveals it's Fen, an elephant who was physically and mentally abused, in hopes that it will become a rotten egg one day. But as a result, he's been traumatized to the point where he can't trust nobody, until Kirby stands up for them and eventually becomes his best friend. I really love the plot in this one. We've had our fair share of monsters who weren't all that bad. Chidi tried to kill Kirby, but only to end Winter, and even then, he didn't have the courage to do it. Chip comes from an episode I don't think many people in the Kirby fanbase would like, unironically. And while the robot dog does defy the standards of a monster, they don't really have a backstory of three-dimensional personality. Like it or not, Kirby's pet peeve works mostly because of Kirby's characterization, and the sweet moments between the two of them. Not really because the dog has a lot of depth. Not that it needed one, but you know. With Fen, the shit really slaps the "if someone works for a villain they must be evil" 2 idea in the face, and shows us what a deranged person, or group of deranged people, can do to a poor, innocent soul, which makes it all the more touching when you finally find someone who can just treat them for who or what they are. It's bittersweet, but in a good way. And hey, that's not the only thing it's got. We also have some hints that Kirby is becoming more mature. It's little things like him being said that he doesn't get to eat any of the apples he offers to them, but just lets them do that. That goes to show how Kirby has changed in small but significant ways since his arrival in Cappytown. And not only does the episode not make the two of them part ways, unlike Catch Me If You Can, Fen actually appears in some of the following episodes, namely the fight to the finish movie. Oh, that's it. And there's one not as weepy is, oh, he's a clown, but evil, so unique and creepy. I do like his design. We also get to see quite a lot of familiar enemies doing their monster training. Mr. Frosty, Yaman, albeit without their signature weapon, Whiskers, Boomer, yes, that is the real name, Dogon, Hothead, and the absolute god Poppy Bros Jr. Always nice to see him anywhere. So, there are two types of people I'd like to address here. The people who haven't watched this episode may not understand what all the hype is about, and the people who have watched this episode and love it are surprised that I didn't put this at the number 1 spot. Let's talk about the episode first, and then I'll explain why it's not higher. One day, Tiff shows her friends her flipbook, rapidly changing the drawings and make her self-portrait look like she's moving. King Dedede secretly notices her and decides to copy her homework. However, he is quickly disgruntled, as he finds the cartoon his assistant made too soft. So he comes up with the idea of making a full-on anime that will be sponsored by Enemy, and everybody is invited to work on it. Dedede quickly pitches the idea for an anime about his persona, but Tiff claims that they should change the main character to something more cute and lovable. So they end up making a Kirby persona, until one fateful night, Dedede changes the drawings to Swappy's and Kirby's roles to make him look good. Okay, why is this episode so popular, you ask? I mean, from what I've said right now, the episode sounds like your average King Dedede framing Kirby as the bad guy kind of story, only with the anime stuff added in. And to an extent, you're right, but it's not just about the plot itself. This episode is full of great satire. The anime, while it's obviously about Kirby getting into all kinds of wacky and fun adventures, could be described as a life drama. I've seen many people in other cases complain about how stupid, unnecessary, or not Kirby-esque the satire is. I personally don't mind most of the parody angle, but I do see where they're coming from. It makes the show feel like a Simpsons or South Park knockoff, featuring Kirby characters rather than an actual Kirby cartoon. Ironically, you could argue that Cartoon Buffoon makes the same mistake many of the other episodes do, yet I've never seen anybody complain about it, and I think the reason why is fairly simple. Cartoon episodes about making cartoons are just plain fun. Cartoon Buffoon also mocks the awful conditions the animation industry, especially in Japan, was in at the time, and even years prior. The voice actors recording the lines in one take, only the mouths moving for most scenes, using camera work to make it look like the characters are moving when they aren't. Seriously, the opening is actually the best part of the anime this time. For real. Didi's cartoon was so bad that its ratings were extremely low, forcing Anime to cancel it. And who could blame them? Would you really watch something that looked like this, unironically? And hey, you don't need to know about the animation industry at the time this episode was released, or the animation industry in general to enjoy it. It's something you can appreciate without knowing the references of the real life context behind it. With all of that said, why isn't this episode higher? Call me crazy, but I think this episode is a bit overrated. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love it, but I think many people forget that not the entirety of the episode is a riot. The first half is significantly less funny than the second. Only when you get to the broadcast of the cartoon the episode is great joke after great joke. That's not to say the first half isn't without its funny moments. I like the parts where Kirby mishears the word producer as pro-loser, Cerebrum wants to help Tiff with her cartoon, and falls asleep, and especially when King Dedede sees all the bad drawings of Dedede Man. That was really funny. But yeah, Dedede's cartoon was one of the funniest things the show has to offer. Kirby being a villain goes as you'd expect, but I don't mind it because of all the great one-liners. And yeah, the animation is terrible, but if anything, it makes it all the more charming. It's not that I don't get the praise behind this episode, because I do. There's a reason why there's a reanimated collab on it. It's just that I don't think it's best episode of the show good. Yes, Cartoon Buffoon is great, but I've seen episodes that are more interesting and that I like better.
わしは常に正義のために戦うのだぞい。
Out of the 4 episodes I watched as a child, the first 3 episodes and this one, this was always my favorite. And honestly, it still holds up pretty well. King Dedede has a special order from NME, a pile of Dedede dolls. No, not the DD dolls, these dolls. He wastes no time selling one of them to everyone in Capitan and claiming that they make you have pleasant dreams if you put them next to you when you go to bed. I love this episode. It may take some ideas from the pillowcase, you know, Dedede tricking the town into thinking something will give them good dreams and using it to hypnotize them, but it goes in a different direction. Every night, Dedede wakes up to cast spells about how amazing he is, I suppose, and other stuff. Day after day, they kept his staff to like Dedede and the doll designed around him, more and more, to the point where they even deposit their money in his new bank, which the king wants to use to pay the salesman who made the dolls in the first place. Like with Cartoon Buffoon, the first half isn't as good as the second, but I'd argue that the other 11 minutes are about as funny, if not slightly funnier than Cartoon Buffoon. So one night, King Dedede decides to humanize the doll, I suppose, as he casts a curse that will make the doll move every time he moves. There is only one problem though. When Dedede's movements are synchronized with the doll, the same is true for the other way around. Yeah, the next day he feels everything that happens to the doll. Whenever the doll gets punched, pulled, or thrown, he has to mimic those actions against his own will. Call me childish or immature, but I couldn't help but chuckle whenever any of those things occurred. It's the kind of thing where you predict what the joke is going to be, and yet you still find it funny. And man, that fight against Kirby using his DDD doll was really creative. Using a toy to manipulate it into attacking him was, well, unique and fresh. This and Kirby comes to Cappy Town are the only times we ever see King DDD fight Kirby by himself, and the only time he fought him while he wasn't possessed, so that makes this episode all the more special. After getting kicked by Tough once again, Kirby and Tiff get spooked by a ghost puppet. This is apparently part of a test of courage that everybody in Cappy Town decided to hold on Summer Day. The winner gets a Hero's Box buried in the graveyard. So it's more or less their own way of spending the Halloween holiday, but during summer. I've heard of Christmas in July before, but Halloween in July is a little more rare. Tiff decides to join to prove she's not scared. Tough and his friends join because why not, and because they're the best characters in the anime, King DDD and Escargoon join with their own ghost, for kicks and giggles. I love how Kirby and Chief Pokem's reactions to the ghost are so nonchalant, like the Chief barely even emotes. Until DDD's ghost shows up, that is. And hey, King DDD and Escargoon get treated with a nice prank. A Kirby with a pumpkin on his head, laughing sinisterly. Just look at him, he's having so much fun. So eventually, he, Tiff and Tough find their reward in a graveyard. A lousy badge. Suddenly it starts raining, so they decide to enter the mansion nearby. Turns out, it isn't any better. The three of them, besides Tough, quickly get locked into it. The suitcase is guarded by beds and there's hyper-realistic blood everywhere. King DDD at one point even plans to make a recording of him pretending to get tied up to his death, so that the kids will try to save him, only for the enemy salesman to capture Kirby. And who would forget the parody of the shower scene in the horror movie Psycho? I like to give it to the animators. The animation in this special, especially in the second part, is unnerving, and will have definitely spooked me out as a child. Here we go, the Halloween episode that never was. It's so scary that the next episode preview told me I won't be able to watch it alone. I watch it alone. At 5 PM, but still. Kidding aside, I'm surprised how dark this episode is, and yet, it didn't air in October. It did air close to the 31st of that month in America, but not in Japan, France, Italy, nowhere else. Escargoon finishes working on his latest invention, an instant camera, but once he and King DDD test it, they're dumbfounded, as they see a ghost appearing in the photo. I mean, it could just be a feature, but they go to Mabel to see whether that ghost was a fake or not. Guess what, it wasn't. The ghost is alive and well and will come to Aunt DDD this very night. As he goes back to the castle, things only get worse. The bridge has a mind of its own. Tiff heard footsteps while walking down the corridors. Sir Abrams' wife fought against the living room's window while watching TV, and Sir Abrams saw a lot of wine bottles float in the air for no reason. Also the first two saw the ghost, cementing the feeling that yes, there is a ghost lounging in the castle in and out. Even Meta Knight believes in this phenomenon. King DDD can't top the monster from Nightmare Enterprises because he didn't pay his bills. Wait, that happens in like every episode, that's not something new. And it goes on and on and on. He can't even go to the bathroom without Escargoon's help. Turns out, there isn't just one ghost, but 3 of them. And surprise surprise, they're just Kirby, Lolo and Lala with some tissues on. They go back to scaring His Majesty until he eventually faints. This is probably the episode where Kirby has the least amount of screen time. Only 14 minutes in do we see him appear, and also Lolo and Lalala too, I suppose. He doesn't appear or even get a mention in the first half. I really love the atmosphere in this episode. I was about to say how it wasn't really that scary, only to give it a pass because it's Kirby, It usually isn't, or at least wasn't, above levels of creepy, but then the torture scene started. I forgot how morbid it was watching Lily being threatened to get axed. Still not that scary, but for kids' shows standards, this doesn't pull any of its punches. But let's cut to the chase. This is a DDD torture episode done right. Ironically deserved right after the episode where he tricked Kawasaki into cooking Kirby. If you follow the original order, not the 4Kids order. So following it up with one that punishes DDD for his bad behavior is really cathartic to say the least. It doesn't even need to rely on past episodes. Escargoon reveals that he's done all of the ghost stuff just to give His Majesty's well-deserved comeuppance, as he's been pulling a lot of mean or outright evil pranks every night. And considering everything he does in the subsequent 20-minute segments, this only makes this one all the more satisfying. Anime DDD haters are really going to get a kick out of this one.
I'm going to punch your face in the face.
Kirby's friends are tired of playing with him because of how clumsy he is, so Tiff decides to buy him a gift. A robot dog that will play with him forever. It's so adorable. Man, whoever came up with this premise deserves a raise. Not only is it heartwarming to see someone who's just like Kirby hanging out with him, it's also pretty emotional. You're happy when Kirby and his dog eventually bond together. You're sad when the dog has to leave Kirby behind. The fact they managed to make those 3 days the two of them had together feel so important, like they had a long-lasting relationship, goes to show how much care was put into this episode. Even Kirby not trusting the pet dog during the first half is somewhat understandable. We never saw a dog at that point. Rarely did you see an animal in general being nice or extremely helpful to him. The beginning where Tiff and his friends are mean to Kirby is a bit jarring, and Tiff accidentally shutting down the dog once it fell into the water was a bit much, but honestly, I don't even care. This episode is a masterpiece, one that must be praised and preserved for generations to come. It's telling when I want to watch an episode again as soon as it's over. The best special and episode the anime has to offer. Where do we even begin? I know, let's start with Kindidi's Kirby phobia in the first part. It's funny. Like, really funny for this show. Yeah, Kindididi has a dream at the beginning where he sees a burning Kirby, but this isn't Fire Kirby, not Kirby using a super spicy curry. This is a genuine, fiery meatball of terror that burns in his castle down. This settles him being pretty paranoid of him, and that's what makes it so funny. We get why he's scared, but at the same time, the situation is so absurd that you can't help but laugh. Not only is it hilarious, but it also foreshadows what's to come later on. He quickly goes to Mabel to talk about how his dream felt too real, almost like a prediction. Mabel reveals that it's not Kirby who's making him paranoid, but his conscience, his heart. He doesn't believe her and calls her a fraud. Some coffee-related shenanigans and pranks later, Kirby decides that enough is enough. He orders a monster that will beat Kirby for good. Because his dream was about one covered in flames, he orders an elephant that focuses on freezing people to death. Friggy. He quickly gets set alight by the same thing he tried to defeat, thanks to Meta Knight giving him a torch. Around the same time, Tiff and Mabel discover an observatory, complete with a giant telescope. They see the sky for a while and find a red star, the Calamity Star Gerat. They tell King Didi about it, but they have the benefit of the doubt that it won't come to eat them. Or at least, not anytime soon. Well, yes, but actually no. The Calamity Star Gerat is real and will collide with Planet Popstar soon enough, as a punishment to anybody who did Nightmare Enterprises wrong, mostly Kirby. And this is where the special gets amazing. Part 1 was great already, but the second one is in a league of its own. It starts off strong, with the town discussing about what would happen if the star actually collided. But most Kirby's, again, try to brush it off, arguing that this kind of stuff only happens every 10,000 years. But that doesn't mean the danger isn't felt already in its first half. Small earthquakes have occurred, the volcano has been out for blood more than it ever was, and Kawasaki hasn't caught many fish lately. As the episode progresses, not only the stuff gets closer, but more strange things happen too, like rats evacuating. Eventually they realize the star will collapse on Kirby Town, and there's nothing they can do about it. So they use Castle DDD as a refuge to confess their mistakes, so they will have a clear heart before they're out of the picture. King DDD, however, is sad, because he can't think of a time when he wronged anybody, and that's when something beautiful happens. In the first part, King DDD was confronted by the Kirby's to build a park for children, to which he obviously denied their request, making a golden DDD statue instead. He didn't know that was messed up. He didn't know that was not only selfish, but almost sadistic. But it's not too late. There's still enough time to build one. And out of all the people he wanted to spend his last few minutes with in the park, he chose Kirby. The same guy he hunted down for so long. The same guy who defeated all of his monsters. If that's not bittersweet, I don't know what is. They've been rivals, enemies even, and will continue being enemies for the rest of the show. And will continue being enemies for the rest of the anime. But for once, he's sure that deep down, he doesn't hate his guts. The reason why this is so touching, unlike in the Appreciation Day, is that it doesn't feel forced in the slightest. King DDD isn't doing this because his nemesis is dead. Well, he will be dead with him soon enough, along with himself, and so many other people in Kirby Town. But he didn't have to do it. He's a king. He doesn't necessarily have to be kind to others. But on one day, he made amends with the Pink Wonder. This is one of my favorite episodes out of any cartoon, and that's because it showed us that even its antagonist can have a heart of gold.
かし恋せよででで
And that was every episode of the show ranked and reviewed by yours truly. I'm surprised at how many hidden gems I was able to find, especially in the later seasons. It's kind of a shame that nowadays this show is usually remembered for what it didn't do, rather than what it did. I think I've made it clear in this video that the anime falters as an adaptation, even by early 2000 standards before Kumasaki took over. But I don't think that was the intention. I don't believe this show was supposed to brainwash all their fans, or even fans who much prefer the universe of the games, to believe that this is the accurate portrayal of Dreamland, or that it's the superior timeline. I believe it was just doing its own take on this franchise, like the mangas and novels. And for what it is, it's not half bad in my book. Definitely could have been much worse. Sure, only a little more than half of the episodes are good, and 30 of them are bad, but I don't consider that a failure. Most bad episodes were mostly boring and uninteresting, and considering the limitations, I do think this show is one of the better video game adaptations, despite all of its flaws. This is the only show about this IP we may have for a long time, and honestly, I'm okay with that. The fact we managed to get 35 hours of pink puff goodness on TV is enough for an accomplishment in my book, even if I would love to have a cartoon based around the games one day. Sonic X is still the better for kids dub.